waliwo akatambi akafulumye ku mutendera gw'ensi yonna nga kano kwoleka ettemu General Kaguta Museveni yazaakola ku bannayuganda okuva lwe yajja paka olunaku olwaleero. Akatambi kano kawongedde okugyayo obujulizi Kyagulanyi Ssentamu Robert Bobi Wine bwe yawa mu kkooti y'ensi yonna ICC nti mu kutyoboola eddembe ly'obuntu mu kutta abantu General Kaguta Museveni alimmo n'olwekyo alina omusango gw'okuwoza, alina omusango gw'okuddamu. Kati nno General Museveni gamukanuse gamumyuse kubanga n'akatambi kongedde okumwanika mu nsi yonna, kongedde okumwambula mu nsi yonna, kongedde okumatiza abazungu, bannansi, abaddugavu, buli muntu gyali kongedde omukakasa n'okumumatiza nti General Kaguta Museveni ye Ssaabatemu asingayo mu nsi yonna mu kukola ettemu eri ku bantu ate balina okuba ng'akuuma. Kana akatambi simanyi oba akayitako kubanga kafulumiziddwa ebitongole by'enjawulo, satellite ez'enjawulo ezongedde okuswaza okulabisa n'okulaga ensi obubi General Kaguta Museveni bwaliko. Kana akatambi nsaba okkirize tukalabe ffenna kubanga General Museveni sisuubira nti n'akayitako era munnayuganda bano badde obeera redde kubanga eno essaawa weetuuse General Museveni agenda kwevuma bannayuganda kubanga ate bali bazibu nnyo ennaku zino.
Sinking into anarchy. Once Haley signs, the country is lawless under military dictatorship and slowly sinking into anarchy. Once hailed as a freedom fighter and liberator, Museveni, who has been in power since 1986, turned into an autocratic leader bent on silencing the opposition, changing the constitution, and suppressing the media in order to maintain a firm grip on his power. This only confirms that Uganda, like some other countries in the region, is slowly degenerating into a failed state. Currently, uncertainty looms with regard to where the country is heading. Rampant corruption, nepotism, tribalism in virtually all government institutions continues unabated. The judiciary lost its sanctity, and the police brutality, human rights violations is at its peak. More often, police and the Uganda People's Defense Force, that is the army, are unleashed on peaceful demonstrations, on groups of individuals conducting political activities, so long as they subscribe to the opposition. But the same police and the army take their time showing up in the case of an emergency. Tear gas has been imported in large quantities while hospitals still lack beds, equipment, and necessary drugs, majority of the schools being in the worst state with poor remuneration, to mention but a few. There is total lack of tolerance for divergent views, especially from the opposition and civil rights groups. No freedom of association whatsoever. Whatever is happening in Uganda in the political sphere is clear proof that absolute power does indeed corrupt. It is a vivid example of how Museveni hates Ugandans, in particular the youth, out of fear of being ejected from the seat of power. In 1980, Museveni lost his presidential bid. Museveni claimed that the elections were not free and fair. He didn't challenge the election results in any courts of law. He shunned court for violence and led a group of people into a guerrilla war that lasted for 5 years, leading to very many people being killed. There is no reason whatsoever to justify the killing of a single person, but close to 800,000 people lost their lives during the war that brought Museveni into power. This alone justifies Museveni didn't come to power because he was democratically elected, but rather captured power. Later, after the war, in the mid to late 1990s, Museveni was celebrated by the West as part of a new generation of African leaders, in a dramatic contrast with Idi Amin, against whom he had led an insurgency. On the 6th February 1981, when Museveni declared a civil war in Uganda, which was in Buganda region in the area known as Luwero Triangle, he was not liked by the people of that area because of his record of killing Ugandans when he was in the Uganda National Liberation Front government, which overthrew Idi Amin's government in April 1979. He then developed a strategy which they used in Tanzania to come and kill Ugandans in Uganda, then go back to Tanzania and put the blame to Idi Amin's government and the army. When they started the war in the Luwero Triangle, they physically went during the night in the Ugandan National Liberation Army uniforms, which was the Uganda government army, and attacked the people, killed as many as they could with the hoes and pangas, and in the morning they put the blame on the Ugandan army. By doing this, the people in the areas started to support them. This kind of killing went on until the war was finished in January 1986. And by the time, according to the records, over 800,000 people lost their lives. On the 26th of January 1986, Museveni declares himself president. Museveni's rule has been described as dictatorial. Dictatorial in the sense that it is just one person, Museveni and his henchmen, that possess absolute power without effective constitutional limitations. He rules by decree. Repression of political opponents, intimidation, murder, imprisonment, violence, and other human rights violations is the order of the day. Abiding by the rule of law procedures is a taboo in Museveni's world. Today in Uganda, there are symbolic elections. Museveni appoints the chairperson and its commissioners of the so-called Independent Electoral Commission. The same commission that organizes and mans the whole entire process that Museveni has participated in for 6 times. Before, during, and after these sham elections, many people have been arrested, many have been killed, many have lost their lives, properties, businesses, and their only crime is opposing Museveni's dictatorial rule. None of the Ugandan elections of the last 30 years have been found to be free and transparent. It has been using the police and the army to step on dissent, stepping on rights of the opposition during, before, and after elections, refusing to accredit election observers from the United States, European Union, arresting and detaining Ugandan election monitors, blocking social media, plus blocking the entire internet access in Uganda. It is in Uganda where they are safe houses, and their main duty is to detain and torture political opponents of Museveni into submission. The constitution of Uganda has been changed several times against the will of Ugandans to prolong Museveni's stay in power. In 2003, Museveni began his assault on the constitution with a view to deleting presidential term limits. Uganda previously had a constitutional limit in place, allowing a maximum term of office of 10 years, 2 5-year terms, and in 2005, Museveni influenced and facilitated the removal of term limits to prolong his stay. In 2017, he even sent his special forces into Uganda Parliament to beat and arrest opposition members who were seriously against the removal of the presidential age limits. A series of protests, arrests, and violent episodes involving the security sector continued to reveal a level of instability in Uganda. In 2017, the lifting of presidential age limit was approved. Of recent, as of 2022, Museveni still wants to again change the constitution in his favor, against the will of Ugandans. Having known that all Ugandans are fed up of him and his dictatorial tendencies, he now wants to abolish election of president, denying Ugandans their constitutional right to vote the president of their choice. The ongoing crackdown of a renowned pop singer and prominent government critic Robert Kyagulanyi, better known by his stage name Bobi Wine, on direct orders from the state is another clear indication of how far Museveni will go to impose his authoritarian leadership style. When it became clear that Bobi Wine, a singer, actor, businessman whose real name is Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, is a serious threat to Museveni's rule, he became the latest Ugandan to face the wrath of the men in uniform on orders from the state. Serious crackdown intensified on him. Bobi Wine, whose influence draws huge crowds of Ugandans, especially young people, was brutally arrested during a colleague's by-election campaign in the northwestern town of Arua in 2018. An attempt on his life was made. It claimed the life of his driver, Yasin Kauma. Hundreds were arrested that day by Museveni security forces. He then faced treason charges that were later dropped. On the campaign trail of the recent sham elections of 2021, the police arrested, tear-gassed, and shot at him several times with an attempt to prevent him from meeting the people, and of course an attempt to finish his life. On several occasions, His campaign teams, including all his security, media, and personal assistants, would be arrested. On the 30th of December 2020, his team was again arrested and spent more than 6 months in prison for simply associating with him, for simply supporting change. During 2 days of protests in November 2020, following Bobi Wine's arrest, more than 150 people were killed, many of them shot by security forces that were deployed specifically to carry out the task, as Museveni confirmed. Since then, more crackdown on dissent has intensified, with the rampant house arrests of Bobi Wine, kidnapping of Bobi Wine supporters. Many of them up to now are still in various detention centers, and some nowhere to be seen. Through his 35 years in charge, Museveni has come to sit at the apex of power, where he is in total control. He has also managed to reinvent himself. Whereas he was once the political upstart in his early 40s, anyone taking on that role now risks incurring his considerable wrath. The good news is that millions of Ugandans, both in Uganda and abroad, have continued to oppose the Museveni dictatorship plus all his atrocities. They have put up a consistent fight under the People Power movement. They have continued to put the international community under pressure to stop funding dictator Museveni, to stop funding the atrocities it commits to innocent Ugandans, have continued to be assertive and against this Museveni dictatorship.
Continue to expand that. Mr. Pop, a lot's been discussed already. Uganda's frustrating to me because there are just a lot of human rights issues that are really pressing. The State Department's latest human rights report documented serious restrictions of political rights and civil society, unlawful killings, forced disappearances, and even torture by state agencies, parts of Uganda's government. Add to that, Senator Murphy already pointedly expressed concerns about a stunning law that's going to undermine our efforts and the successes we have through PEPFAR in the region. They have an important role for this. Our bilateral relationship is really important when it comes to United States interests, its regional interests in that area, promoting democracy, human rights, but also just general security issues. And it's just a very difficult balance. Could you maybe address the concerns I have for a government that started out so hopeful years ago and now seems to be slipping towards behavior that is demonstrably violent, unjust, and undemocratic?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, you sum it up very clearly and accurately. I think the concern is that Uganda is headed in a direction that is not good for Ugandans, and all of these areas, and as friends of Uganda and the region and the people of Uganda, we should be clear about where those challenges are, be clear-eyed in how we assess ways to work forward with civil society, with other stakeholders in the country. Obviously, issues of torture, violence, those types of abuses have to be rejected completely and clearly in our diplomacy, in our conversations and discussions with the host government, and also find ways to support increases in democratic space instead of restrictions. That is everything from building space for NGOs and for organizations that are advocating for all of the communities that are facing challenges. It includes making sure that we're talking with all stakeholders in the country, including the political opposition, so that we're hearing very clearly about ways to find solutions going forward to change, hopefully, in a constructive way, the trajectory that Uganda is on. At the same time, as you note, there is a number of areas where Uganda has previously been an important partner on security and regional stability. And of course, we want to try to continue to find ways to work in those areas, because it's an area that faces a lot of challenges, as we've seen even recently.
All right. Byebyo. General Yoweri Kaguta Museveni ensi kati emwambula bwambuzi, ensi eyongera okumumanya, ensi eyongera okumutegeera, ensi eyongera okukakasa ddala nti omuntu ono mutemu omuntu ono mukozi wa bikolobero, omuntu ono tasaanye kwesemberezeka wadde tubadde tukola naye wadde tubadde tumwesembereza wadde badde atukolera ddiiru zaffe nnyingi naye ate okusinziira nga bwe kiri asusse okutyobola eddembe ly'obuntu. Walina okubaawo ekikolebwa okulanga Uganda ne bannayuganda bataasibwa ku muntu ate abafuukidde ensonga abafuukidde ensolo mu kifo kyandibadde abakuuma obukuumi. Awo nno we tutuuse bannayuganda twongere okusindika twongere okupushinga paka ng'ensi yaffe eteredde paka ng'abazungu abo abapikaapika n'okuwagawaga Museveni bongedde okutegeera nti Uganda bannayuganda bali bubi era beetaaga eddembe lyabwe beetaaga bakomye okulaba nga bawagira omuntu oyo atuusaako ebikolobero ate mu nsi yaffe. Kale nno twongere okukola ekyo ekituufu ekitwala General Kaguta Museveni tusobole okweyagalira mu nsi yaffe, abaana baffe bagyeyagaliremu naffenna tusobole okugyeyagaliramu. Byebyo nno tujja kuddamu twogere. Omukama Katonda nsaba bankuumire mwenna gye muli mweraba.